bring on Republican Congressman Brad Wenstrup right now, U.S. Representative for Ohio's 2nd Congressional District since 2013. Congressman, thanks for jumping here on the show. I want to start with the latest news, and then we'll kind of backtrack a little bit. Jim Jordan jumping in for House Speaker. He was the first to throw his hat in, and then Steve Scalise throwing his hat in. These are two well-respected individuals. Your thoughts on those two, and do you expect more?
Well, I think those are two great Republicans, to be honest with you. And so I think there might be more. I hear rumblings. What I hope to do, and well, first of all, we will have them all in front of our conference come Tuesday, and we'll try to get a speaker very quickly. As a physician, we have a large doctor's caucus, which is 20 members, and we don't endorse per se, but health is obviously a big issue, and for me, health and national security as a soldier and veteran. But we plan to try and get the candidates in front of us to discuss health issues and see where they stand on some of the things that are making us have a very difficult time being a healthy nation. But there'll be the opportunities to hear from all of them. We'll see. I mean, it just has all happened so quickly, as you might imagine. So we got good people. I love the work that Jim has been doing, obviously, on investigations. I'm doing the select subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, which is origins of COVID, things I've been researching for the last 3 years on Intelligence Committee. I want to make sure I can continue that work and that can continue my work on Intelligence Committee and then move forward with some of the health issues that we want to see get put into law.
All right, so I'm going to hit on COVID with you at the end of this interview, but I want to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned health. You were the first one to attend to Steve Scalise when he was shot back on June 14th of 2017. I believe he is battling a form of blood cancer right now. So if I'm reading between the lines of what you said, I'm thinking that his health might be worrisome for some members of Congress as far as him holding the gavel next.
As far as I know, and as far as Steve has told us, he just was at MD Anderson. He's in good shape. He looks good. He's as energetic as ever. And I think those are decisions he will make between he and his physician along the way. Like both of these guys are close friends, but as far as I know, Steve is heading in the right direction with his treatment, and he hasn't been missing a beat as of late. So I would suggest he has every right to run. I guess that's maybe something some people will be concerned about, but I believe he's reached out to his doctors and sought their advice on where we should go. So we'll see. But he looks great, and he's been very active.
Congressman, let me ask you this. Do you think this will be a quick process, or do you think it'll be elongated? Because both these guys, as you just mentioned, good friends of yours, they're well respected. I can see a split vote, and I can see this dragging on for quite some time.
What I hope we do is, I've always taken the approach that whoever wins in conference, that's who I'm going to vote for on the floor, because I'm a team player. And if that's whichever way our team decides to go, then that's the way I'm going to go. And I think we work best like that. And then once that decision is made, we go to the floor, we elect the speaker, and I continue to work with whoever it is. And like I said, I've had good relationships with both of these people. They both have encouraged the work and the issues that I'm working on, and I appreciate that. So, it's just unfortunate we are where we are, and I hope that we don't have the disruptions that we've had. I will say that I do think we take away the rule that allows one person to make a motion to vacate, because, what we saw is we had a few members join with Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats to oust a Republican speaker. We have $33 million in debt. Think about what happened. The speaker offered a vote on a 30% cut to domestic discretionary spending. I voted for it. Some of those that wanted to remove the speaker voted against it. Why? These are the things that they want to see happen, which we all do, by the way. We're in control of 1/3 of the government, and we hold that majority by 1%. And yet, Yet what we were able to do is we were able to force massive concessions from Biden, who said he would never negotiate on the debt ceiling. And he forced Biden to accept the most significant deficit reduction in a decade, $2 trillion over the next 6 years. We clawed that back. Is it enough? No. But it's a start, and it wouldn't have happened otherwise. We also put into the bill, there's a 1% cut if all 12 are not done, and we go to a CR. Right, those types of things, and so we've got that, but we're fighting against a Democrat White House and Senate. So my take is, for some reason, the Democrats didn't like how effective Kevin McCarthy might have been, and so they certainly voted to vacate. And with these other members, look, I'm not going to pretend this is a problem within our conference, and it hurts us to do this, to oust the speaker. Democrats all voted for it, and they got 8 members on the Republican Party to vote for it. I don't want to stop our investigations into the Biden family and the Department of Justice and the FBI and on COVID. And this is paralyzing us. And what we had agreed to with going ahead to keep the government open was for us to stay for the next 2 weeks and work and get more of our appropriations bills done than we already have, but to get them all done. We decided to do that. And I was supposed to be investigating the WHO and spending time with the director of the WHO, Tedros. He was coming in to meet with me. I had to cancel that trip. So we've really set ourselves back in a lot of ways, unfortunately. So I do hope that the process is fast and we get back on track and we can do the work that America wants us to be doing, the Republican Party wants us to be doing, the conservatives want us to be doing, and that we can have some accountability on the FBI and the CIA and the DOJ. But look, we promised to our conference there would be transparency, accountability. We let people, there were hundreds of amendments. We let people voice what they wanted to see, to offer amendments, and you vote them up and down. That's how democracy works. And then you move on. And so I thought we were going in the right direction, more so than I've seen. This is my 6th term, more so than I have ever seen, where we actually going in regular order and getting things done. Was it complete on time? Unfortunately, no. But now we're delayed even further.
Talking to Congressman Brad Wenstrup right now, represents Ohio's 2nd Congressional District, Cincinnati. Okay, so when I took a look at this, when I first saw this go down, Congressman, I thought, okay, so what is McCarthy's biggest crime? That he reached across the aisle to get some Democratic votes to pass a bill keeping the government open. Well, what did Gates just do? He went to bed with all the Democrats to remove the speaker. I mean, you want to talk about hypocrisy. His biggest complaint about McCarthy was working with Democrats. He just worked with Democrats to basically sabotage his own party, and so did the other Republicans. I mean, I think it's shameful.
Well, I'm glad you see it that way, because those are just matter-of-fact items right now. If we're working towards the things you say you want to do, which is get the appropriations bills, and that is where we were headed. Did we get them done on time, per se? No, I don't know that we really ever have, except for maybe a couple times since I've been in Congress. That doesn't make it right, but at the same time, it shouldn't make you stop the process altogether, which is what happened.
Well, and you take a look, I mean, you even had the liberal media, Congressman, finally paying attention to the Hunter Biden investigation. They were all over Joe Biden. You got them paying attention to the southern border for the first time in forever. Everything was stacking up against the Democrats. And then Gates and his cohorts come in, and now they give Democrats material to sit back and say, look, they can't even run the House, and they want the Senate and the White House?
We had attached to the continuing resolution a border bill that would have put Democrats against the wall on the way the Biden administration has been handling the border. We would have probably gotten a lot of support from Democrats that are now feeling the heat of all this. And we had a certain few that voted it down. Why? Let's just be realistic about what we tried to do with the cards that we have. And they're not that many. And you look at all that we have gotten done with the cards that we have, and we could have done even more, and they voted it down. So just remember, as thousands come across that border every day, the very people that took out the speaker are the people that have prevented that from happening, that have prevented us from stopping it.
That's a very good point. Now, Patrick McHenry, the Republican out of North Carolina, who is the interim House Speaker, first thing he did was kick Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer's rear ends out on the curb. He took away their private offices. Is this retribution? Is this the Republicans' way of saying to the Democratic Party, shame on you for what you did with these 8 Republicans, and here's what we're going to do in return?
Well, Patrick would have to answer that. I didn't even know they had their own little private office. So Patrick was aware of that. And, I will tell you this. One of the things that Speaker McCarthy did, and he went to Hakeem Jeffries when he became Speaker, and he said, I'm going to treat you as the minority leader in the way that I wanted to be treated as the minority leader under Pelosi. I'm not going to treat you in the way that she treated me. All right? So that in a nutshell. So seeing as how that wasn't enough for the Democrats to say this is a bad process and we shouldn't let it happen and we can table the motion to vacate, they all voted to go ahead with the motion. And so maybe that was a little retribution and saying, you know what, I was treating you the way I wanted to be treated, and you're not doing the same. So maybe that was Patrick's way of saying, touche. Granted, you served in positions of leadership for years, and that was a nice little perk that we're letting you have. Actually, most people leave in that situation, right? When it's time to leave that leadership position, they leave. Those two have not, and maybe Kevin was trying to be cordial and respect their years of service and their previous leadership positions. And, well, if you're not going to respect it back, then we can take that away.
All right. Now, Congressman, I want to switch gears. You were a colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, an Iraqi War veteran. You said you serve on a number of committees, including the oversight of CDC policies and decisions during the COVID-19 pandemic. I talked extensively recently about a CIA whistleblower who came out and said the CIA bribed its own COVID-19 origin team to reject the lab leak theory. So I believe there were 7 members on this team. 6 of them said, yeah, it came out of a lab in Wuhan. The 7th, the most senior, said, yeah, I don't think so, and went back to the other 6. And according to this whistleblower, got them to change their stories. What validation have you learned about that story or anything else pertaining to the origin of COVID-19?
Yeah, so this was a whistleblower who was not one of the 6 or 7, if you will. Okay. And came forward, but very intimately associated with the whole process, and came forward and alleged that this is what you said happened, that 6 of the 7 said this came from the lab, but there was some influence peddling taking place that said got them to agree to saying that they could not decide. And that's different than saying 6 out of 7 thought it came from the lab. And so that's what they put forward publicly, and that's what we had to eat, although I'm still trying to investigate how each agency came to their conclusions. And I'm seeing patterns of how some conclusions were made and why the FBI, for example, said it came from the lab. Well, they did more research than anybody else, and they talked to the right researchers in the form of what's called computational virologists. Also, the DOE said they felt it came from the lab, and they have more scientists than anybody else because they have the national labs. So now you have the CIA, which plays coy in this and says nothing could be decided. And what the whistleblower is saying is influence came in and said, change your way. Now he also alleges that there was some monetary compensation. I don't know if that's in the form of someone getting what might routinely be a performance bonus. I don't know. But those are the things we're looking into. We're looking into all the communications that took place. And now we have allegations that Dr. Fauci happened to be at Langley at the CIA at the same time, likely trying to influence the decision. Well, if he's influencing it scientifically, that's one thing. If he's influencing it politically, that's another thing. And the science has, of course, not really been able to be debated in public, and that's a problem because people were censored and their voice was squandered, and they call it conspiracy theory, et cetera. We've got a lot of information through Intelligence Committee, which I serve on, which is a benefit to have that. So I have a lot more information than just the subcommittee at this point. But, of course, a lot of it I'd love to get to be declassified.
Would you classify me as crazy if I said it is my 100% belief that this came out of a lab in Wuhan? And the real question is, was it released on purpose, or did some moron not follow protocol? Am I way off base in saying that?
Well, I think those are certainly the legitimate questions to ask. And I think even what you know from open source, you can draw your own conclusion based on what or summation. Now, we're never going to have China come and tell us exactly what happened.
Right.
But we can look at a lot of things that happened in China and around China and the programs that they have in place already that we know about. And you can start to draw your own conclusion where you're not seeing the same abundance of evidence to say that it came from nature. So I think you can draw your own conclusions. And that's what I want the American people to be able to do. I want them to see all the facts. I want to see what the internal conversations were with Dr. Fauci and those that came out and said it came from nature in a paper called Proximal Origins, when quietly they're talking to each other saying, well, we know this type of research is going on in Wuhan. You know, so the big question is, if there's a cover-up, why is there a cover-up? Why do you not want to have the scientific debate? That's the beauty of science, is to be able to put everything out on the table. And we haven't seen that in America. You got chastised if you wanted to have the debate.
Right.
Well, that's got to end, and we're going to continue to reveal as much as we possibly can for the American people and for people around the world, for that matter. And going forward, how do we prevent this from ever happening again? Because whether it came from nature, whether it came from a lab intentionally, whether it came from a lab accidentally, we want to make sure that America at least is prepared to be able to predict it, prevent it, prepare ourselves, and hopefully this doesn't happen again, but also and to benefit the whole world. This week, because of all the stuff going on in Washington, I am not overseas with the head of the WHO to discuss Chinese influence on the WHO and how we can make the WHO, if we're going to continue to be part of it, to make sure that it's a legitimate organization that exists for all of humankind.
Congressman, thank you so much, as always, for making some time for me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.